as I listened to each of the interviews, so many people have spoken about sexuality and touch. They've talked about the body and they've mentioned love. And I really wanted to expand upon this. So I am really appreciative of Dr. Ricky Siegel, who is going to interview me today.
Okay, it's an honor to be back with you, Erica, and thanks again for doing this monumental task. And it is my pleasure to kind of turn it around and give you a chance to highlight your work, since you've been speaking to so many others about theirs.
Thank you.
Sure. I'm going to start with your bio. Dr. Erica Goodstone is a love and mentor relationship healer, helping men and women, individuals and couples, gay and straight, to heal their relationships through love. A licensed mental health counselor, licensed marriage and family therapist, ASEC certified sex therapist, American Board of Sexology diplomat, licensed massage therapist, certified Rubenfeld synergist, which is a type of somatic body-oriented psychotherapy, and a personal life and health and wellness coach. Former professor of health and physical education for over 2 decades at FIT State University of New York, Dr. Erica created the first human sexuality course, along with courses in stress management, holistic health, gymnastics, other physical activities, and yoga. She's taught about the mind-body-spirit connection and health decades before health awareness became more mainstream. Dr. Erica organized the New York metropolitan area ASEC section, a group that created its own conference at the National ASEC Conference, and later organized an ASEC certified continuing education event at FIT. She's been a member for several decades and presented her work in the past at STAR, the Society for the Scientific Study of Sexuality, and ASEC, as we've been talking about a lot, the American Association of Sexuality Educators, Counselors, and Therapists. Dr. Goodstone's doctoral dissertation, based on the work of Dr. Margaret Mahler about the long-term effects of mother-infant bonding, has provided the basis for her understanding of her clients' intense ambivalence, fear of intimacy, and separation anxiety that often interfere with creating a lasting, loving relationship. So, Dr. Goodstone, I'm going to ask you some questions. First, if you could just talk more generally about your background, education, the training that led you to focus on first health and physical education, then body therapies, and eventually sexuality.
Well, thank you for asking that. I started out in an era when women really had very few choices unless you came from an unusual family or you had an unusual drive. So women had a choice of being a teacher, secretary, or a nurse. And so I became a teacher. I taught in elementary school. My major was in psychology and elementary ed. I was always fascinated by psychology. So I taught in a school without walls. It was an experimental school with a kind of dictator for a principal, and 4 of us quit together in January. And then I worked as a hospital care investigator, and I worked, my favorite job was at a recording company. I got to be out in the world and meet these really successful people. I loved it. But my uncle said, go back to teaching, that's good for a woman. And also, I happened to see the secretary making out with the president of the company, and I also saw the salaries, and I saw that women made about, the top woman there made about half of the salary as one of the lower men with half the education that she had. So I listened to my uncle's advice, and I went back and I taught, but I went to teach in elementary school, and I wasn't happy there. I was going out to play tennis in the afternoons. So I thought if I was teaching about tennis and other activities, I would be much happier. So I went back to get a master's degree in health and physical education. And I did teach at the high school level for several years. But I got a few teaching positions at colleges around the area, and I loved the freedom, the academic freedom and the collegiality. So I knew that I needed to be in a doctoral program, and somebody just haphazardly told me about a program at New York University in human sexuality, marriage, and family living. So that was perfect. I signed up for that. And during the course of teaching health and physical education, I always had these injuries and ailments because I was always overdoing it, taking a weekend training and then doing another thing and then going horseback riding. So I had these injuries and I went to receive all kinds of body therapies. And then right toward the end of my dissertation process at New York University, I went for a weekend at the Association for Humanistic Psychology, and that's where I saw Alana Rubenfeld do this miraculous work with someone on the table. This person had pneumonia, and then as Alana was working with this person, helping her body to relax, helping her to talk about the issue, all of a sudden she started coughing and was saying, "Get off my chest," to the people in her life, her husband, her mother, and somehow that put it all together for me, something about the body and the mind. And I was in this doctoral program in human sexuality, and I didn't know how to put all that together. And Alana Rubenfeld, who was my teacher and mentor, helped me to, she just said, just do it yourself, create your own system. So I have combined my work in human sexuality. I took many workshops and trainings, some with Masters and Johnson, and with many other leaders in the field. I took Betty Dotson's really interesting masturbation workshop. I took a lot of personal exploratory workshops and trainings, plus the traditional sex therapy training. And I've put it together, and that's the way I've worked with clients for years. The other piece was that mother-infant bonding that Dr. Margaret Mahler so elegantly showed in her work, that in the first 3 years of life, whatever goes on between the mother and the infant, at that time was only the mothers, but fathers also have a huge effect. That just showed me that we can't just look at what's happening now. So I always take a really in-depth history, and I'm always fascinated by the backgrounds that people come from and how that affects what's going on now. I've had clients say, you know, why do I have to take a history? What does that have to do with anything? But of course it lays the foundation, and it's important.
Sure. Could you tell me, tell us all a little bit more about learning about touch and somatic therapies and integrating them with healing sexuality through touch?
Well,
Let me just say before you answer, I know this kind of treads towards a line that a lot of folks find somewhat controversial, and a lot of the misconceptions, like we talked about in our interview, about misperceptions people have about sex therapy, and think that sexual activity or nudity or touch are somehow part of that therapy.
absolutely. I mean, people don't think that sex therapy is really a skill and a knowledge base. They think that sex therapists may be less qualified than other therapists, even though we have to be more open and more aware in many aspects. But the other part is if you are combining sex therapy with touch therapy, forget about the way people respond and what they think I'm doing, and they think I'm a surrogate or whatever. But I want to go back to something that really touched me, and this was, I met Dr. John Money at one of the conferences, the Quad-S conference, Society for Scientific Study of Sexuality, and he gave me a book, or he sent it to me, called Children of the Creche, and it was a book about babies not adopted, but being brought up in an orphanage in Lebanon. And what they studied, these children, and they discovered that they weren't getting enough sensual stimulation, they weren't getting touched, and the people running the place were also people who had lived there, so they didn't have that communication and that touch. And these children became retarded. Mentally retarded, except if they were adopted by a certain age. If they were adopted early enough, they could regain their intelligence. If they were adopted a little later, they regained some intelligence, but not the full intelligence. So that's just one piece. Then Dr. Tiffany Field has done a tremendous amount of research. She's a psychologist, but she did a lot of research on massage therapy. And the type of studies that she did were really only 15 minutes, 3 times a week. So it wasn't like full massages, it was just a little bit of touch. And they had amazing results. Lowered anxiety, less depression, blood sugar levels were better, and so many other things. So those are just 2 of the studies. Then I've read more recently that people who've had some kind of physical abuse early in life end up having more chronic illnesses later on in life because it's all stored in the cells of the body. So the person who really talked about that was Dr. Candace Pert. I've also met her. I did meet her when she was alive at many conferences where she wrote this book, Molecules of Emotion, which was really a groundbreaking book about how the neurotransmitters spread throughout the body, and that what body therapists have known since for decades, anyone who does this kind of work has seen amazing results, but we didn't have the research to back it up. And now the research is really coming. So that's why I was anxious to talk, because I wanted to add this piece to what other people have said on the summit. So a study that I wanted to share at DePauw University, they had a barrier, and the subject put their arm through the barrier, and then a stranger who was also in this study would touch that person's arm, but they were touching with a certain intention. So they were touching with the intention to show anger or compassion or tenderness or whatever the emotions were. And what they found, for some of those emotions, both men and women who were receiving the touch might recognize the emotion. But when a man was trying to show compassion to a woman, the woman is the one receiving the touch, the man is doing the touching. If he was trying to show compassion, she just didn't get it. She didn't understand that he was trying to show compassion. And the other way around, when a man was the subject being touched and a woman was touching him and trying to show him anger, he didn't get it. So that was really fascinating, and it reminded me of the book by John Gray, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. So we need to understand each other, where our misperceptions can cause a lot of problems. So that's one aspect of the touch. And then another important aspect that I just have learned about, I've heard that there was one gene that is turned on only by touch, but there's a whole project that was done on the C. elegans, I love the name of that genome, that they were able to break into the cells and discover which genes are turned on in that cell. And in that process, this is not the only thing they found, but they found 18 genes that are needed for the development and function of a single type of sensory neuron, a touch receptor neuron for gentle touch.
Wow.
So realizing that, I realized that, and I'm sure people have talked about this and starting to write about it, that if we don't get that touch in our early age, really, really young age, then we have, maybe it'll never be turned on. Maybe it's completely blocked or suppressed, but we're not going to be able to feel that tender touch. So realizing this, I thought about a lot of the body therapies that I've received. And I used to, as an athlete and muscle tone, I liked the deep tissue. I loved Ralphing. It was painful, and neuromuscular and trigger point therapy. All of that is good because it digs in and gets deep in there, breaks something up. But what happens in the body is when you get deep tissue work, your body also resists. So it's like getting yelled at, and you might give in, but you resist and you hold back. So the body does the same thing. Whereas with the gentle body work, floods of emotion can happen. And I remember a particular day I went to for 2 sessions in the same day. One was bioenergetic analysis with Dr. Alexander Lowen, and the other session was a Rubenfeld synergy session. And in the Alexander Lowen session, he does this powerful work, but he was literally pounding on my back, pushing, and my attitude was, I'm not going to give in. And I remember tightening up, I'm not going to give in. But then I went for that Rubenfeld session, and I lay down on the table, and I got a little gentle work, and I was just crying. But the part that I can put together is that maybe I needed some of that tough work to get to be ready to open up in the gentle work.
Nice.
But a little more about it. A few more people that I trained with talked about the importance of light touch. Alana Rubenfeld said to touch with a feathery touch, not feathery to be sensual, but like the weight of a feather, just lightly holding. And so did Dr. John Upledger, who created craniosacral therapy. He was a way out type of person. He was an osteopath. He worked with the medical establishment, and he wrote books showing all the anatomy and the physiology. And then somewhere in there, he would sneak in a little piece about how his client went into a past life and had a deep spiritual experience. So he also talked about using very light touch, the weight of a nickel. No heavier than a nickel, and the other quality was patience, staying there and being patient. So think about a couple in an intimate relationship. If your partner is patient with you and staying there and holding, particularly someone who's been abused. When I've worked with people who have been abused, I can't just go in and touch them. They might not want their head touched or their stomach touched. One guy, something came out where he had what was called pink belly. He got teased by a whole group of men, and they slapped him or tickled him, and he wouldn't let anyone go near his belly. But that came out through a session that may not have come out through talking, because he would hide it. It wasn't something he was proud of. Yeah. So another piece of the touch has to do with the energy field. We have an energy field in us. We have meridians that go vertically, connected to the organ systems, and we have chakras that are like these vortex centers. So all of that is flowing in our body. So if we're in a relationship and someone goes right through the energy field, we miss out on something. You don't feel the same way. That's why in movies they show passion and there's a distance and they can't get together, and that energy is building. And just one more piece was about the rocking motion. In Traeger, I learned about the power of gentle rocking, like rocking someone's head, rocking their shoulder, rubbing the belly, not the kind of touch that a lot of people do where you grab and you move, and that's not it. It's gentle, it's holding, and that's a lot that I know about touch.
It seems kind of a natural and a little surprising to me that more sex therapists don't go down these routes, but that body somatic therapies and these mind-body connection therapies seem to lend themselves pretty naturally to doing work with sexuality, particularly, as you mentioned, with folks who have had kind of sexual trauma or disconnect from their body. Talk a little bit about how these therapies dovetail with couples work in sex therapy.
Yeah, well, I was on the original steering committee for the U.S. Association for Body Psychotherapy and the first few boards. And I thought, this was in 1996, there was an event in Massachusetts, Salem, Massachusetts, the place where the witches were burned. We all went to see that. But they brought together all the leading people in all the different kinds of body therapies and somatic therapies. And it was a beautiful event. This was 1996. And I thought that by now the whole world was going to know about this. but somehow it's not really out there a lot. It's little pieces. I remember a sex therapist saying to me, I wouldn't touch a client with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah.
That was the attitude. And the attitude about touch is really not good. But we have found, research has shown, if a waiter or a waitress touches their client, they're more likely to get a bigger tip.
Right. And don't we encourage couples to touch one another all the time in sex therapy?
Yes, we do it, but it's so prescribed in a small area. We need touch. It's a touch-starved society. So the other piece that I wanted to share, that's why I was so anxious to talk about this, is that the research is catching up about the power of the mind-body therapy. So one piece is the brain. We know that we have the prefrontal cortex, which is our thinking, but that's only one portion of what goes on in relationships and touch and sexuality. We have the limbic system that involves the hippocampus, which involves short-term and long-term memory, so that our memories get caught up in their memory of good touch and good feelings and negative feelings. And we have the amygdala that feels and processes emotions and maybe sometimes doesn't process it well because we had a trauma. And we have the nucleus accumbens, which is a pleasure reward pathway. And we have fMRIs that are testing all of this now. And we are starting to see what areas of the brain light up from different experiences. And what I know from touch, and anyone who does mind-body touch somatic therapy will say that through touch you can access memories and emotions that are stored in body cells that you may not have accessed through talking. And you can actually heal through touch. So sexuality with the touch involved can be the most healing thing we do if it's done with gentle, caring, love, nurturing, that kind of touch. But that's only one piece, is the brain.
Talk a little bit more about the direct health benefits of sex and touch.
All right, I'm going on, but there's two more pieces. That's why I wanted to continue with this, because it's not just the brain as we think it is. There's a whole other part. Now, there's someone I worked with, Mantak Chia. He was a Qigong expert, and he ran workshops, and he had us jumping, and he would always say, smile to your organs. And we felt good smiling to the organs, but we thought it was a little silly. Well, the research now is saying that there is a second brain, which is called the enteric nervous system in our gut. And guess where the sexual organs are? And so, and Dr. Beverly Whipple and Dr. Barry Komisarek talk about the vagus nerve, and Dr. Mitch Wepper talked about, Mitch Tepper, I'm getting these names confused, talked about that. But here's some of the facts about the gut, and I just had to share this on this summit. There are over 500 million neurons in the gut, 1/200th of the number of neurons in the brain.
Wow.
But 5 times as many as the 100 million neurons in the spinal cord. So we have 500 million neurons in the gut and 100 million in the spinal cord. Therefore, the reflexes for erection and for orgasm that are in the spine, we don't realize the effect of whatever's going on in the gut that might affect that reflex. So what you're eating, how you're digesting your food, and also those butterflies in your stomach and, the upset feelings you have, that is all connected to our sexual functioning. And there's a little more just about the gut. 90 to 95% of the body's serotonin, the feel-good hormone, is in the gut. A huge amount of the serotonin, and 50% of the body's dopamine is in the gut. That's the hormone that helps us to feel excitement and novelty and to want to connect with someone. So the gut uses more than 30 neurotransmitters, also has acetylcholine. So it's huge what's going on in the gut. But that's not the end of it. The third part is our heart. And there's research on that also. The HeartMath Institute has talked about the power of the electromagnetic field of the heart, which is 5,000 times stronger than the magnetic field of the brain.
Wow.
So you put together, that's why I had to share this, because I've been studying this, and it came out because I was creating my 30-day love challenge, and it's 30 daily lessons about love. One of the lessons is about the hormones, one is about the brain and about the emotions, and as I was organizing and researching this, I found this amazing information, and I wanted to share it because all of the therapists on this summit and all the medical doctors, everyone who spoke was talking about how important connection is, how important the heart is and the communication. Well, there's science to prove that it's not just nonsensical. It really is what's going on. So love and intimacy require a balance between the heart, the brain, and the gut.
Mm.
And when it's all connected, that activates our spirituality.
Well said. Wow. Okay. Can you talk a little bit about what's challenging and rewarding in your work with sexuality? First, what do you find most challenging?
Yeah, for me, what has been most challenging is the way people view a sexologist. When I was in New York, I worked in New York, I was a professor of health and physical education as my main identity, and as sex therapist part-time. I always had a practice in sex therapy, but it was a little part-time. When I relocated to Florida, I was no longer this professor of health and phys ed. I was a sex therapist. And that's when I got the jolt from people. I went to these local networking groups. I belonged to one for a long time. And we're at a party with the group, and someone is introducing me and says to this person like this, you know what she does? And, that's the kind of thing I was getting, and I really didn't like it.
Mm.
And then when they heard in the networking group that I also did the touch therapy, and this is gentle touch, you don't get undressed or anything. It's for a purpose of just the way Freud had people lying on a table, letting down, free associating. That's what you're doing, but you're receiving this gentle awareness, and I'll help you to say, you lift your arm up and it stays up in the air, so your arm is tense, and I'll point it out and you start to see what's going on, and then you let down. So what's been challenging has been the view that people have of sexologists, and I was bringing together all the sexologists for this summit to hopefully help the world get another perspective.
And how about the rewards?
Well, the rewards,
gratifying.
That's for most of the therapists, most of the people on this summit, the reward part is the easier part. It's really an honor to have somebody come to see me and share their most intimate information and trust me and trust what I'm saying and attempt to do whatever I'm asking, and then to let me work with them on the table and then have an awareness. That's what happens, an awareness. As your body lets down and these other parts, your heart and your gut, you can really access what's going on there, and your brain sort of takes a back seat. You have a new awareness. Suddenly an idea comes that, oh, I understand this person and why that's happening and what I need and what I can do differently. So that's what's beautiful about it.
Mm-hmm. Again, well said. Well, thank you, Erica, for creating this and also for doing this Sexual Reawakening Summit. Again, you've been so gracious and reaching out to so many other therapists to help them talk about their work and help them plug their work. I want to give you the same chance. How can attendees and viewers of the summit contact you or find out about your books or courses?
Thank you. The main places are, I have several websites, but my main authority site is drericagoodstone.com. And I have all my stuff listed there. But I also have a site for therapy, drericawellness.com. And my 30-day love challenge is an event. It's 30 days out of your life, and it can really transform the way you view love, the way you connect. Each day has lessons and exercises to do, and it's really beautiful. And I also have a Healing Through Love seminar series, and I have books on Kindle and Smashwords, and I have the full books and the smaller books. So I have a lot to offer. And I want to thank you so much,
My
Dr. Siegel,
pleasure.
for interviewing me today.
Indeed, my pleasure. I'm looking forward to attending the summit myself.
Thank you. And I hope that all of you watching have enjoyed this summit. I am humbled by the generosity of the speakers, all these sexologists that took time out of their busy schedules when they're on their way to another country to present a workshop or a training, and they're writing their book and there's a deadline. They took time out to be interviewed and to share because they all believe in the power of sexuality. So if you found this valuable, you have 3 more days to watch the entire summit. But you can also get the whole summit for a really nominal fee, and it's discounted during the summit. It will go up in price at the end of the summit. So just click the button on this page so that you can get the whole summit and have it and return to it and look at all the information that all these wonderful people have. Also, you can watch, there are 2 people speaking on this page about 2 of the major organizations, and there will be another page with the other sexology organizations listed. I wanted to end with a very important, poignant letter written by a father to his daughter. But this is not your average father. This is one of the leading scientists of the 20th century, Dr. Albert Einstein. Here's what he wrote, a part of his letter to his daughter. After the failure of humanity in the use and control of the other forces of the universe that have turned against us, it is urgent that we nourish ourselves with another kind of energy. If we want our species to survive, if we are to find meaning in life, if we want to save the world and every sentient being that inhabits it, love is the one and only answer. Perhaps we are not yet ready to make a bomb of love, a device powerful enough to entirely destroy the hate, selfishness, and greed that devastate the planet. However, each individual carries within them a small but powerful generator of love whose energy is waiting to be released. When we learn to give and receive this universal energy, dear Lucille, we will have affirmed that love conquers all, is able to transcend everything and anything, because love is the quintessence of life. And I want to add, our sexuality is a huge part of love, of our love. When we share our love openly, freely, in intimate connection with ourselves and with another human being, there is nothing more powerful than that.